සුවඳ තවත් තිකු කලක් රැඳෙන්න ඩබල් පර්ෆියුම් ලුක් සමගින් එන නව සන්ලයිට් රෝස්.
Tonight, suspicious intent. Police are investigating multiple attacks on Catholic shrines in the Mana fort and suspect attempts to rouse communal tensions. Heads up! The Turkish envoy in Colombo warns of Sri Lanka being a definite target for FETO infiltration once again. A step towards reopening. Tourism authorities push for mandatory quarantine waiver for vaccinated tourist arrivals.
We know that the tourists who are coming to our country is low risk as far as the variants are concerned.
The race is on. Efforts to increase daily vaccinations continue as 19 more Delta variant detections raise public concerns. All this and much more coming up on this Thursday, the 15th of July 2021.
ඒ කියන්නේ ලයිෆ් බෝයි අවස්ථා 10කදී ලෙඩ රෝග 10කට හේතු වන වෛරස් ඇතුළු විෂ බීජවලට එරෙහිව සටන් කරනවා කියලා.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Shanella Fernando in your top stories for tonight. A spate of vandalism incidents have been reported in the Mana area, with the latest taking place yesterday. Unidentified suspects carried out the attacks targeting 4 roadside Catholic shrines, after which police have deployed multiple teams to identify and apprehend them. Speaking to the media, Secretary to the Ministry of Defence, General Kamal Gunaratne says that government will ensure that such acts that attempt to create disharmony will be defeated. Mana police are conducting investigations into a spate of vandalism incidents targeting Catholic statues located within the Mana fort area. A series of 4 attacks within the span of a week have raised suspicions of an organized gang being behind the incidents. Police says that several unidentified individuals had attacked the roadside shrines with stones, shattering their glass cases, but had avoided attacking any of the churches located nearby. With no leads yet, the police have deployed several investigation teams to find out who may be behind the acts. Responding to media about the incident, Secretary to the Ministry of Defence General Kamal Gunaratne insists that swift action will be taken to prevent any such acts that could possibly lead to a rise in communal disharmony.
පොලිසියට උපදෙස් දීලා තියෙනවා වහාම ඒ පිළිබඳ පරීක්ෂණ පවත්වලා ඒ සැකකාරයන් අත්අඩංගුවට ගන්න කියලා. මේ වගේ දේවල් නැවත ඒ ප්‍රදේශයේ නොඑන්න. මොකද ඒ ප්‍රදේශයේ හින්දු ජනතාව ඉන්නවා, මුස්ලිම් ජනතාව ඉන්නවා, බෞද්ධ ජනතාවක් ඉන්නවා, ඒ වගේම ක්‍රිස්තියානි ජනතාවක් ඉන්නවා සෑහෙන ප්‍රමාණයක්. ඉතින් ඒක නිසා මේ වගේ හැම ආගමකටම අයවලුන් ජීවත් වෙන ප්‍රදේශයක මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න ඇති වෙලා ජාතීන් අතර ආගම් අතර ප්‍රශ්න ඇති වෙනවා දකින්න අපිට අවශ්‍ය නැහැ. අපි රටක් විදියට ජාතියක් විදියට එකට ඉන්න ඕනේ නිසා මේ වගේ අවාසනාවන්ත සිද්ධීන් කරන අයවලු නීතිය හැමෝට ගෙනල්ලා දඬුවම් පමුණවලා මේ වගේ සිද්ධීන් නැවත ඇති නොවන විදියට අපි වග බලා ගන්නවා.
4 teams have been deployed in order to conduct investigation into the incident happened in Mana area under the supervision of Senior Superintendent of Police Mana Police Division. According to the investigation teams, they have collected evidence from the scene. Especially we are going to collect circumstantial evidence, direct evidence, scientific evidence, and apart from that technical evidence in order to solve the crime. According to the police reports, all the ethnic groups, all the religious groups, they live in harmony in the area. Therefore, we believe that an individual or individual groups tried to create panic or conflict situation in the area. So therefore, we have deployed maximum strength in the area along with Sri Lanka Army to conduct mobile patrols. We believe that we would be able to apprehend the suspects very soon because we have collected certain evidence in respect of the suspects.
අඩසේ වසකට වැඩි ජනතා විශ්වාසය නව සංයෝගයකින් Rhino roofing සහ ceiling sheet.
Before the country could get over the horrific tale of the sexual exploitation of a 15-year-old girl through an online advertisement, we bring you another harrowing story today, and this time it's a 13-year-old girl who was subjected to sexual abuse for years. Shockingly, the father of the girl is among the suspects arrested and remanded in connection with the crime. On the 3rd of this month, the mother of a 13-year-old child lodged a complaint with the Navalapitiya police that her daughter had been missing for the past 2 days. Then 4 days after the complaint was filed, the missing child showed up at a relative's house in AdaDerana. After handing the young girl to AdaDerana police, she was then placed in protective custody with the Navalapitiya police. After the girl was examined by the judicial medical officer at the Navalapitiya District General Hospital, the sexual abuse that she had been put through was revealed. Based on her statement, the police moved to arrest 6 suspects, of which one was shockingly her own father. Preliminary investigations have revealed that her abuse at the hands of her father had been going on for 3 years since the age of 10. The second suspect in the case is a 32-year-old who claims to have been in a relationship with a 13-year-old. According to the victim's statement, she had been taken to a cave in the Harangal area and had been sexually abused for 3 days. Another of the suspects arrested for aiding the sexual exploitation of the child was her aunt. When the suspects were produced before the Navalapitiya Magistrates Court today, they were remanded until the 26th of this month. Meanwhile, police media spokesperson Senior DIG Ajit Rohana revealed that 4 more suspects are on the run with police teams closing in. He added that the Sri Lanka police is to begin conducting awareness programs at village and school levels in order to prevent such despicable crimes against children.
It has been observed that there is a tendency of increasing child exploitation and offences against children. Investigating crime and apprehending suspects are the prime duties of Sri Lanka police. But we need to prevent such crimes. We need the support and cooperation of all stakeholders. Therefore, Sri Lanka police are conducting special awareness programs at village level and school level through Police, Children and Women Bureau units. We are intending to implement the awareness program, and we need the support and cooperation from all the stakeholders in the system.
Meanwhile, with regard to the sexual exploitation of a 15-year-old girl via a website, the remanded captain and his assistant attached to a private shipping company have been successfully identified by the child during an identification parade held today. This was confirmed by the Colombo magistrate in open court today. The 2 suspects were then released on a cash bail of 25,000 rupees each.
Big 3.
The Turkish Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Demet Sekashiaglu, has warned Sri Lanka to watch out for further attempts by FETÖ, an organization banned as a terror group in Turkey, to return to clandestine operations in the island. The envoy called on the government to continue to keep a close eye on suspicious terror elements and promised to maintain close relationships with Sri Lanka to prevent any such attempts.
Issuing a media communique, the ambassador of the Turkish Republic in Sri Lanka, Demet Sekashiaglu, has warned of the banned Turkish organization FETÖ seeking to return to Sri Lanka. The Turkish envoy adds that Turkey's official initiatives with friendly nations to outlaw the organization have had positive outcomes, leading to several countries declaring FETÖ as a terrorist organization. She also appreciated Sri Lanka's support for the Turkish government's efforts to crack down on the organization's international operations. The envoy also spoke of having previously warned Sri Lankan authorities of the existence of FETÖ operations in Sri Lanka in the guise of schools and business operations. She also warned that the organization, having suffered setbacks in Turkey through government operations, the organization is now looking to expand overseas, which Sri Lanka considered a definite possibility. The envoy assured that Turkey will maintain close cooperation with its Sri Lankan counterparts to prevent any such attempts. In conclusion, the envoy expressed confidence in Sri Lanka's ability to carry out comprehensive surveillance on any suspicious terror elements attempting to enter Sri Lanka, including FETÖ members.
More news on the other side of this break. Stay tuned.
ගෙදරකට තේ හදනවා කියන්නේ වෙනම වැඩ. එක එක්කෙනාගේ පදම වෙනස්. මැලිබන් තේ ගෙදර පදමට තේ.
Welcome back in more news. The Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority announced today that vaccinated tourists with a negative test PCR result conducted upon arrival can travel outside of any biosecure travel bubbles. The authority also stated that it has requested the Ministry of Health to consider waiving off the mandatory requirement for tourists to undergo a second PCR test 7 days after arriving in the country.
The Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority, in consultation with the Ministry of Health, has decided to fully allow vaccinated tourists who furnish a negative PCR result on arrival in Sri Lanka to travel the country freely outside of the travel bubble procedures. Before today's decision, and irrespective of their vaccination status, tourists entering the country were expected to undergo a mandatory 14-day quarantine at a Tier 1 hotel. During this period, tourists would be subjected to a second PCR test after 7 days, allowed visitors to tour the country in a biosecure travel bubble. Explaining the revisions of the entry requirements further, SLTDA Director General Dhammika Vijayasinghe stated that vaccinations using any World Health Organization approved vaccine will be accepted. Further, tourists who have received a mix of AstraZeneca and Pfizer and Moderna vaccines will be permitted to enter Sri Lanka. In addition, vaccinated parents will be allowed to enter the country with unvaccinated children aged between 2 to 18 if their on-arrival PCR tests return negative. Vijayasinghe added that the SLTDA has also requested the Ministry of Health to waive off the second PCR test requirement for tourists in this category as well.
At the moment, there is a requirement to undergo day 7 PCR. The requirement for day 7 is for everybody. We have made a request to do away with the day 7 PCR. However, everybody between 2 to 18 will anyway have to undergo the day 7 PCR because they are not vaccinated. Otherwise, they are more among the community. And if the returning airline make a request that they have to have a negative PCR for boarding, they will have to undergo an exit PCR.
However, given the rising number of the highly infectious Delta variant across the world, questions are being raised whether this is the right move at this juncture.
At the moment, there is a standing committee in the Ministry of Health that look at all the tourism sector. They decide on the countries that are allowed to come to Sri Lanka and give advice on the guidelines. We know that the tourists who are coming to our country is low risk as far as the variants are concerned. However, we are always giving the samples for the Jawadanapura University where they check for the variants. Therefore, if somebody is positive, we know which variant it is. We are following up on the arrivals and their PCRs and the details. That's why we made this request. But if the Health Ministry decides that it's too risky, we accept it.
Sri Lanka confirmed 19 more Delta variant patients today from samples obtained from the area of Piliyandala and the districts of Colombo, Jaffna and Kilinochchi. As this development places the overall number of Delta variant patients at 38, Deputy Director General of Public Health Services Dr. Suzy Pereira urged the public to strictly adhere to health guidelines, even if vaccinated, and not to assume a false sense of safety.
The Delta variant of COVID-19, known for its extremely virulent and deadly nature, was first detected in Sri Lanka on the 17th of June in Dematagoda. 2 weeks later, the Sri Jayawardenepura University confirmed the detection of 14 other infections. This raised the country's overall number of Delta variant cases to 19. However, today, this figure rose by another 19 cases. Deputy Director General of Education and Research at the Ministry of Health, Dr. Hemantha Herath, stated that the Delta variant has been detected in community samples obtained over the past couple of days. He added that the variant was detected in samples obtained from Piliyandala in the Colombo district, Jaffna and Kilinochchi. As such, the number of Delta variant cases identified now stands at 38. In this backdrop, Deputy Director General of Public Health Services, Dr. Suzy Pereira, urged the public to continue to adhere to health and safety guidelines now more than ever if they want relaxed restrictions to continue.
The Delta strain is also quietly spreading, but we understand that there are a lot of relaxations that have been permitted, and it's permitted with a reason, but this reason should not be abused by the people. If this is abused, then we are going to be in a huge crisis. It's a crisis that the health sector and the people of this country will never be able to afford, because the Delta strain is highly virulent, and if this spreads, then we will not be able to enjoy anything. So if we want to continuously enjoy whatever the relaxations that have been permitted, then we must know how to behave also. The precautionary practices are important, and this is important for those who have taken the vaccine also, because there is a false sense of security that people who have taken the vaccine are not going to get the disease. That's all wrong.
Meanwhile, the country's daily COVID-19 numbers for yesterday was reported at 1,540. The Western province confirmed the highest infections with 624. In the district-wise breakdown, it was the Gampar district that recorded the highest cases. In addition, 87 foreign arrivals undergoing treatment at centres across the country were also part of yesterday's caseload. As for today, the country confirmed a total of 1,447 new COVID-19 infections so far. In the meantime, Sri Lanka's COVID recoveries rose by 939 today, taking the total figure to 253,953. According to the Health Promotion Bureau, Sri Lanka's COVID-19 recovery rate is nearing the global COVID-19 recovery rate, which currently stands at 91.34%. Sri Lanka, on the other hand, is not far off from reaching and surpassing this figure, as the island nation's overall figure stands at 90.67%.
With Sri Lanka setting new vaccination records, the immunization drive is to be strengthened with the flow of more vaccines into the country. Sri Lanka is set to receive a consignment of 1.5 million doses of Moderna vaccines via the World Health Organization's COVAX facility tomorrow morning. Meanwhile, the walk-in vaccination centres operated by the Triforces were praised by the WHO's country representative, Dr. Alaka Singh, today, who noted that everything was being conducted in an organized and systematic manner.
Since the 8th of July, when the country first passed the 200,000 vaccination mark, the country's daily vaccination graph have shown a sudden vertical rise in numbers. Despite there being a slight slowdown last Friday, Saturday and Sunday, vaccinations began exceeding 200,000 from the beginning of this week. However, on Tuesday, the daily vaccinations crossed the 300,000 mark, quite a significant achievement for the country's health sector staff and military personnel engaged in operating the hundreds of centres. Yesterday's vaccination tally is by far the highest this week, with 384,763 jabs administered, setting the current record. Of this number, a total of 338,572 were China's Sinopharm vaccines administered as first doses. A further 35,410 Sinopharm jabs were given as a second dose as well yesterday. The balanced jabs consisted of 3,365 Sputnik first doses and 7,416 Pfizer first doses. No AstraZeneca doses were administered yesterday. In the meantime, Sri Lanka is set to receive a consignment of 1.5 million doses of Moderna vaccines as a donation through the WHO's COVAX facility, making it the fifth entrant into the country's vaccine mix.
Tomorrow morning, we will receive 1.5 million doses of Moderna vaccines as a donation from United States through the COVAX program. Chinese Embassy of Colombo has announced today they are going to donate another 1.6 million doses of Sinopharm vaccines during the next couple of weeks. When we receive this 1.6 million, the Chinese donation will be increased up to 2.7 million doses of Sinopharm vaccines. For the next 2 weeks duration, we will receive Sinopharm 1.6 as a donation, another 2 million as commercial purchasing, and 150,000 doses of Pfizer vaccines. And we are waiting for the confirmation of delivery date for Sputnik and AstraZeneca vaccines. So Japan has already announced that they are going to donate 1.5 million doses of AstraZeneca vaccines.
Meanwhile, in a move to speed up daily vaccinations, the Sri Lanka Army opened a walk-in vaccination centre at the Viharamadevi Park Open Air Theatre today. Members of the public were full of praise for what they said was a methodical and efficient operation being conducted by military personnel. World Health Organization country representative Dr. Alaka Singh too arrived and inspected the centre's vaccination process.
This has been a really impressive effort. Very clearly, it's a very important contribution to Sri Lanka's vaccination effort. The environment, the very systematic way in which people are being vaccinated, the additional support in terms of the ambulance, the doctors present in case of an adverse event, which of course has not happened. And it's really good to see this, and we hope that this will be maintained because the Excellency has a very ambitious vaccination plan which looks very feasible, and this would be a very important part of that effort. I think it's incredible that the entire government has come together. The army, of course, is a very important part of the Sri Lankan effort, and repurposing in this way to handle the pandemic on the serious footing that we needed for an emergency is really, really welcome. And of course, WHO stands by the government of Sri Lanka to make sure that all national targets are met.
In the meantime, school teachers and non-academic staff were too also seen getting their COVID-19 vaccinations at centres established across the island during the day.
The new immigration section at the Bandaranaike International Airport was declared open today with 23 new counters that will look to increase its passengers handling capacity. The new section, built at a cost of 420 million rupees, was fully funded by the Airport and Aviation Services of Sri Lanka Private Limited using its own funds and is part of the airport's Phase 1 expansion project.
A new immigration centre at the departure terminal of the Bandaranaike International Airport, built as part of the Terminal 1 expansion project, was declared open today by Minister of Tourism Prasanna Ranatunga. Built at a cost of 430 million rupees using Airport and Aviation Services Limited funds, the 23 new immigration counters added to the existing facilities are expected to cut down passenger processing time significantly.
Under the BIA Terminal 1 expansion project, 23 new immigration counters have been added at Bandaranaike International Airport. We have just completed Phase 1. Phase 2, ladies and gentlemen, will be completed in another 2 months' time. We are planning to provide separate counters for business passengers as well as for officials. We added new areas for shops and restaurants with all services. In addition, new office areas for immigration have been constructed with a full facility to uplift the services to the passengers, including the facilities for national security services. The passenger handling capacity has been a major issue at BIA, as the existing passenger terminal building has been built to handle only 6 million passengers per annum. Accordingly, now extended the number of immigration counters and equipped them with latest technology to facilitate faster clearance procedure at BIA, and it will reduce overcrowding and delays at the airport and enable the passenger hassle-free exit to reach their final destinations.
We'll return after this short commercial break. Don't go away. Welcome back in your business news. Asian shares advanced today as the economic data from China was largely more resilient than expected. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan gained 0.4%, with Hong Kong's Hang Seng rising 1%. Mainland Chinese shares were little changed, with the CSI 300 index almost flat. China's second quarter economic growth fell just short of forecasts on an annual basis, with GDP growth slowing to 7.9% from a year earlier from a record 18.3% expansion in the January to March period. But seasonally adjusted growth of 1.3% on the quarter in April to June period was slightly better than expected. The all-share price index ended higher today after gaining 47.10 points to end at 7,986, while the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks closed at 3,031 following a gain of 19.15 points. Meanwhile, the Sri Lankan rupee remained unchanged against the US dollar at 202 rupees and 89 cents. Now let's have a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for joining. I'm Shanella Fernando. Have a good night.